Mia Taylor stood in front of the mirror in her small rented apartment, staring discontentedly at her reflection. The 19-year-old girl with chocolate skin and expressive brown eyes frowned as she turned from side to side. Trying on a new blouse, she was once again disappointed by how loosely the fabric hung on her chest. "It doesn't fit again," Mia muttered, taking off the blouse and tossing it on the bed. She put on a loose t-shirt and walked out of the bedroom into the living room, where Lucas White, her boyfriend, was lying on the couch, buried in his phone. "What's wrong?" he asked, without looking up from the screen. "Same problem," Mia sighed, settling down next to him. "Nothing fits right." Lucas finally looked up. His 22-year-old face took on a familiar expression, a mixture of irritation and condescension that always appeared when Mia started talking about her appearance. "Mia, we've already discussed this. There's a solution." "I know," she said, wrapping her arms around her knees. "But surgery is serious and expensive." "It's not that expensive." Lucas sat up straight and took her hand. "Listen, you suffer because of this every day. Get your breasts enlarged and all your problems will be solved." Mia looked at their intertwined fingers. They had been dating for 2 years. They had met in high school, and when Mia enrolled at a local college in Connecticut, they decided to move in together. Lucas worked at an electronics store and dreamed of starting his own business, although it was still just talk. "Do you really think I should do this?" she asked quietly. "Baby, of course." He pulled her closer. "Imagine how you'll look in a swimsuit this summer. No hang-ups, no clothing issues. You'll love it, I'm sure." Mia bit her lip. Lucas had been talking about this for months. At first, he hinted at it, but then he became more and more insistent. Lately, he had even started showing her photos of girls after surgery, admiring the results. "I don't have that kind of money," she reminded him. "My part-time job at the supermarket barely covers my rent and tuition." Lucas smiled and took a small credit card out of his pocket. "I applied for a loan. It was approved yesterday," he said, handing the card to Mia. $20,000. That should be enough for a good clinic." "Lucas." Mia stared at the card in shock. "You took out a loan? For me?" "For us," he corrected her. "I can see how much you're suffering. Besides," he winked, "I'll enjoy it too." Mia felt a lump rise in her throat. On the one hand, it was a generous gesture. On the other, she couldn't shake the feeling that Lucas was doing this primarily for himself. "I need to think about it," she said, getting up from the sofa. "And talk to Janelle." Lucas frowned. "Your friend is going to lecture you again. You're a grown woman, Mia. You can make your own decisions. I just want to hear her opinion." "Okay," he said, picking up his phone again. "Just don't drag it out. If you decide to do it, you'll need to choose a clinic and make an appointment." Mia nodded and went to the kitchen. She poured herself a glass of water and stared thoughtfully out the window. In the 2 years she had been with Lucas, she had changed noticeably. She had never been particularly self-conscious about her appearance before, but Lucas, he constantly compared her to other girls, made comments, pointed out her flaws. And gradually, Mia began to see in the mirror what he saw, an unattractive girl who needed to be improved. The next day, Mia met Janelle at a student cafe. Her friend listened without interrupting, but her face grew darker as Mia spoke. "He really took out a loan?" Janelle asked when Mia finished. "For your surgery?" "Yes," Mia said, twirling her cup of cold coffee between her hands. $20,000. "And what did you decide?" "I don't know," Mia admitted. "On the one hand, I'm really tired of being self-conscious about my body. Maybe this will be better." Janelle put down her half-eaten sandwich and leaned closer. "Mia, listen to me. It's your body, and only you should decide what to do with it. But I can see that Lucas is pushing you into this. Are you sure you want to change yourself to fit his standards?" Mia lowered her eyes. Janelle always knew how to get right to the heart of the matter. "It's not just him," she replied uncertainly. "I want to look better for myself." "Did you want to a month ago? A year ago?" Janelle shook her head. "Mia, I've known you since 5th grade. You never talked about your breasts until you started dating Lucas." Mia was silent. She had no rebuttal. "Besides," Janelle continued, "any surgery is risky, especially if you're looking for cheaper options. And with Lucas's loan, you'll both be in debt for years." What do you suggest? Mia asked. Wait, don't rush into anything. If you're still sure you want it in 6 months, then go for it. But right now... Janelle took her friend's hand. Mia, you're beautiful just the way you are. And if Lucas doesn't understand that, maybe the problem is with him, not you? Mia felt her eyes fill with tears. She blinked quickly to keep them from falling. Thank you, she whispered. I'll think about what you said. But when she got home that evening, Mia saw Lucas sitting at his laptop. He motioned for her to come over and pointed to the screen. Look what I found. Dr. Nelson's clinic. Great reviews, and the prices are well below the Connecticut average. Mia looked at the website. It looked professional. Before and after photos, testimonials from grateful clients, a solid-looking clinic building, and indeed the prices were significantly lower than other websites she had seen. How safe is it? She asked, remembering Janelle's warning. Absolutely! This guy is a pro. He just doesn't have a clinic as fancy as the others. That's why the prices are lower. Mia studied the photo of the doctor. Jack Nelson, 38 years old, with degrees from prestigious medical schools on the wall behind him. He looked confident and trustworthy. We can make an appointment for a consultation, Lucas suggested. We'll just talk to him, ask some questions, no obligation. Mia hesitated. Janelle's words were still ringing in her head, but Lucas's enthusiasm was contagious. And to be honest, part of her really wanted a change. Okay, she finally agreed. Let's make an appointment. The consultation was scheduled for the following week. Dr. Nelson made a good impression on Mia. Calm and attentive, he explained the procedure, the risks, and the expected results in detail. The price was even lower than listed on the website, a special offer for young clients. I want to think about it some more, Mia told Lucas as they left the clinic, and talk to my parents. Why? Lucas frowned. You're 19. You're an adult. They'll find out anyway. I'd rather tell them myself, Mia insisted. 3 days later, Mia stood on the doorstep of her parents' house in the suburbs of Hartford. She was nervous, knowing how conservative her parents were about such things, especially her father. Logan Taylor opened the door and hugged his daughter tightly. A tall, strong man with already noticeable gray in his closely cropped hair, he still had the bearing of a military man, even though his service was long behind him. Mia! Cheryl, look who's here! Her mother came out of the kitchen, drying her hands with a towel. She was the complete opposite of her husband, short, with soft features and kind eyes. Sweetie, what a surprise! She hugged her daughter. Come in. I'm just baking your favorite pie. At dinner, Mia tried to keep the conversation light, but her parents quickly noticed her tension. Is something wrong? Her father asked, pushing his empty plate away. Are you having problems at college? No, Dad, school's fine. Mia sighed deeply. I came to tell you about a decision I've made. She briefly explained the situation, trying to sound confident. Her parents listened silently, but their faces showed that the news had shocked them. Surgery? Her mother asked when Mia finished. But why? You look fine. It's all that boy's influence, Logan frowned. I told you from the start that he wasn't right for you. Dad, it's not Lucas, Mia lied. This is my decision. Where did you get the money? Her father asked. Operations like that cost a fortune. Mia hesitated. Lucas took out a loan, she admitted. See? It's his idea. Mia, you're a smart girl. How can you not see that you're being used? That's not true. Mia raised her voice. Lucas cares about me. He wants me to be happy. Happy? Logan stood up from the table. Happiness isn't fake breasts that some quack will stick in you. Dr. Nelson isn't a quack, Mia defended him. He has an excellent reputation. Then why are his services so cheap? Her father countered. Did you even check his license, his qualifications? Mia was embarrassed. No, she hadn't checked. She had simply trusted the website and Lucas. Sweetheart, her mother interjected gently, maybe you should think about it some more. These aren't decisions to be made on a whim. I've thought about it, Mom, Mia said, feeling irritation rising in her chest. I've made up my mind. I didn't come here for permission. I came to let you know. As long as you're living off our money, you'll listen to our opinion, Logan snapped. And I'm categorically against it. It's dangerous, it's stupid, and it's completely unnecessary. I'm 19, Mia flashed. I can decide what to do with my body, and I'm not living off your money, I'm working. At the supermarket, part-time, her father remarked skeptically. You can't live on that. Who's paying for your education? Who gave you and Lucas the money for the down payment on the apartment? Mia felt tears of resentment welling up in her throat. I'll pay back every cent, she said through clenched teeth. And I'll have the surgery, whether you like it or not. Cheryl tried to soften the blow. Mia, your father is just worried about you. We both are. Surgeries like that are very risky. I understand, Mom, but I've made up my mind. Logan shook his head. You're making a mistake, daughter, and someday you'll realize it. Mia got up from the table. Thanks for dinner, Mom, she said, trying to keep her voice from shaking. I have to go. Stay, Cheryl asked. Let's talk calmly. What is there to talk about? Mia smiled bitterly. Dad has already decided everything for me as usual. Don't you dare talk to your mother like that, Logan said sternly. I'm leaving, Mia said, heading for the door. I'll call you during the week. She left the house without looking back, even though she could hear her mother calling her. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she quickly wiped them away. Her parents had never understood her, especially her father. He was always controlling, always telling her how to live her life. Well, this time she would do things her way. Mia took out her phone and dialed Lucas's number. I agree, she said as soon as he answered. Let's do this operation. The morning of the operation was cloudy. Heavy clouds hung over Connecticut, promising rain. Mia woke up early before her alarm went off. She lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to calm her racing heart. Lucas was snoring next to her. In the 2 weeks since their visit to her parents, they had hardly spoken about the operation. Mia had made her decision, paid the deposit, and the subject seemed closed. She quietly got out of bed and went to the bathroom. The pale face in the mirror looked haggard and frightened. Mia washed her face with cold water, trying to dispel her anxiety. Everything will be fine, she whispered to her reflection. It's a routine procedure. Thousands of girls do it every day. When she returned to the bedroom, Lucas was already awake and sitting on the edge of the bed, checking his phone. Good morning, he smiled at her. Ready for the big day? Mia nodded, not trusting her voice. Don't be nervous. Lucas came over and hugged her. By tonight, it will all be over and you'll be on your way to a new life. They ate a quick breakfast, and Lucas drove Mia to the clinic. On the way, he talked non-stop about how beautiful she would be, how their lives would change, what clothes she would be able to wear now. Mia stared silently out the window at the houses and trees rushing by. Dr. Nelson's clinic was located in a small 2-story building on the outskirts of town. Inside, it was clean and modern, though not as luxurious as the photos on the internet. At the reception desk, they were greeted by a nurse who checked their documents and asked Mia to fill out some forms. Mr. White, you can wait here, the nurse said to Lucas when the formalities were completed. The operation will take about 3 hours, after which Dr. Nelson will come out to you personally and tell you how it went. Lucas hugged Mia tightly. See you soon, beautiful, he whispered in her ear. I'll be here. Mia smiled weakly and followed the nurse into the clinic. She was shown into a small ward where she was asked to change into a hospital gown and undergo the necessary preoperative procedures. Dr. Nelson stopped by when everything was ready. How are you feeling, Mia? He asked with a professional smile. A little nervous, she admitted. That's perfectly normal, the doctor nodded. But trust me, there's nothing to worry about. We've discussed everything, and you've signed the informed consent form. Everything will be fine. Mia nodded, feeling a lump rise in her throat. She suddenly remembered her father's face when she left her parents' house 2 weeks ago. His eyes were full of pain and disappointment. For a moment, she wanted to cancel everything, run away from there, go back home. It's time, the nurse said softly, interrupting her thoughts. Mia was wheeled into the operating room on a gurney. The bright lights, the smell of antiseptics, the soft voices of the staff, it all merged into a surreal background. The anesthesiologist explained the procedure to her and asked her to count backward from 100. 100, 99, 98. Mia began, and the world went dark. Dr. Jack Nelson looked at the vital signs monitors, frowning. The operation had been going on for 2 hours, and all that time they had been faced with unexpected difficulties. First, there was a problem with the anesthesia. The patient almost woke up in the middle of the procedure. Then, complications arose with the implant. "Her blood pressure is dropping," reported the anesthesiologist, an elderly woman with a tired face. "I see," Nelson replied, without taking his eyes off the operating field. "Give her adrenaline." Usually, operations like this didn't cause him any difficulties. He had performed hundreds of similar procedures in his career. But today, everything was going wrong. Maybe he hadn't slept well enough. Maybe he had drunk too much the night before. Or maybe he was just unlucky. "Doctor, she's losing blood," the operating room nurse said alarmingly. Nelson cursed under his breath. He had accidentally hit a vessel that shouldn't have been there. At least not that big. An anomaly? Why didn't it show up on the scans? "Clamp quick," he barked, trying to stop the bleeding. The next 30 minutes were spent working feverishly. Nelson tried to fix the situation, but with every minute that passed, things got worse. The patient was losing blood faster than they could replace it. "Her blood pressure is critical," the anesthesiologist said, no longer hiding her panic. "Her pulse is weak, and her oxygen saturation is dropping." "Call the city hospital," Nelson decided. "We need urgent transport and a team of resuscitators." But it was too late. When the team of doctors arrived, Mia Taylor had been clinically dead for 20 minutes. All attempts at resuscitation were unsuccessful. At 19 years old, as a result of a routine cosmetic surgery, Mia died. Lucas sat in the waiting room, nervously tapping his fingers on the armrest of the chair. The operation had been going on for 4 hours, although the nurse had said 3. He tried to distract himself, scrolling through the news on his phone, playing games, even flipping through a clothing catalog, imagining how Mia would look in new outfits. When Dr. Nelson entered the waiting room, Lucas knew immediately that something was wrong. The surgeon's face was gray, his eyes downcast. "Mr. White," Nelson's voice sounded hollow. "I'm very sorry. There were unexpected complications during the operation." Lucas stared at him, confused. What did complications mean? Where was Mia? Why was this man speaking in such a tone? "We did everything we could," Nelson continued. "But the situation got out of control. There was massive internal bleeding, and despite all our efforts—" "No," Lucas shook his head, standing up. "No, you're confusing something. Where's Mia? I want to see her. Mr. White, I understand your shock, but Miss Taylor is dead. She didn't survive the operation." The world around Lucas spun. He felt his legs give way and sank heavily back into the chair. "This can't be," he whispered. "It's a routine operation. You said yourself that the risks were minimal." "There are always risks in medicine," Nelson rubbed his nose. "In rare cases, even simple procedures can lead to unpleasant consequences. I offer you my deepest condolences." Lucas sat there, stunned by grief and shock. Mia was dead? His Mia, who had smiled at him that morning, hugged him, who had been so nervous before the operation he had insisted on. "Someone has to tell her parents," he said finally. Nelson nodded. "Usually in cases like this, we contact the next of kin, but if you'd prefer to do it yourself—" "No," Lucas said quickly. I can't." He suddenly remembered how Logan Taylor had looked at him during their last meeting, with poorly concealed contempt and distrust. What would he say when he found out that his daughter was dead? That it was all Lucas's fault for insisting on the damn operation? "I understand," Nelson nodded. "In that case, we'll contact her parents ourselves. Perhaps you should go home and rest. You're in shock. You need time to process what's happened." Lucas nodded mechanically. Home. Yes, he needed to go home. But how could he return to an apartment where everything reminded him of Mia? How could he possibly go on living? Cheryl Taylor was washing dishes when the phone rang. She dried her hands and picked up the receiver, smiling out of habit, even though the caller couldn't see her. "Hello? Taylor speaking." "Mrs. Taylor?" The unfamiliar male voice sounded formal and tense. "My name is Dr. Jack Nelson. I'm calling about your daughter, Mia Taylor." Cheryl frowned. Nelson. Why did that name sound familiar? Then it dawned on her. He was the doctor who was supposed to operate on Mia. "What happened?" she asked, feeling a chill run down her spine. "I'm very sorry to have to give you this news over the phone, Mrs. Taylor," Nelson continued. "But there were serious complications during the operation." Cheryl didn't hear the rest of the words. Her ears rang, and dark spots floated before her eyes. She didn't notice that she had dropped the phone and slumped to the floor. Logan found her there 20 minutes later when he returned from work. Cheryl was sitting on the kitchen floor, hugging her knees, rocking back and forth quietly. "Cheryl?" He rushed to his wife. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" She looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears. "Mia," she whispered. "Our girl. She's gone, Logan. Our little girl is gone." Logan froze, unable to comprehend. Mia, gone, but how? Why? "During the surgery," Cheryl continued through her sobs. "The surgery she told you about. Something went wrong. Bleeding. They couldn't save her." Logan sank heavily into a chair. His strong body suddenly felt like cotton wool, unable to move. He stared straight ahead, but saw nothing but his daughter's face. Mia, his little girl who loved it when he carried her on his shoulders, who called him every time she got an A in school, who cried on his chest when she broke up with her first boyfriend. Mia was gone. He couldn't wrap his head around it. "I told her," he whispered. "I warned her it was dangerous." "Logan," Cheryl got up from the floor and walked over to her husband. "Don't. Not now." He hugged his wife and held her close. They stood there for a long time, crying silently. The next few days passed in a fog. The police arrived and began their investigation. Death during a medical procedure required an investigation. The body had to be identified, the funeral arranged, relatives and friends notified. Logan did everything mechanically, like a robot. He didn't cry. All his tears had dried up that first night. Now there was only emptiness and a dull, helpless rage inside him. At the doctors who couldn't save his daughter. At this guy, Lucas, who pushed Mia into the operation. And at himself, for not being able to talk her out of it, for not being able to protect her. Lucas hadn't shown up. Not at the morgue, not at the Taylor's house, not at the funeral. Janelle, Mia's best friend, said she saw him briefly at college. He looked broken and lost. "He's scared," Cheryl told her husband that evening after the funeral. "He's scared of you, Logan." Logan didn't answer. He sat in his chair, staring at the blank TV screen, thinking about the daughter they had buried that day. About 19-year-old Mia, whose life had been cut short by a stupid, unnecessary operation. Janelle visited them the next day. She brought a photo album that she and Mia had made together in school. "I thought you might want it," she said to Cheryl. They sat in the kitchen, leafing through the album. Mia in kindergarten, with chubby cheeks and cute pigtails. Mia at school, proudly holding her first science project. Mia as a teenager at her high school graduation, serious and elegant in a modest dress. "She was so beautiful," Cheryl whispered, stroking the photo. "So bright." "Yes," Janelle nodded. "And she didn't deserve what happened to her." "Do you know where Lucas is?" Logan asked suddenly, entering the kitchen. Janelle flinched. She rarely saw Mia's father, and he always seemed a little intimidating to her. Now, with his face frozen and his gaze cold, he looked truly dangerous. "I'm not sure," she replied cautiously, "but it seems like he hasn't been going to class for the last few days. He's probably at home." Logan nodded and left the kitchen without further comment. "He's completely withdrawn," Cheryl said quietly when her husband's footsteps faded. "I don't know how to help him. I'm barely holding on myself." Janelle squeezed her hand. "You'll be okay. It'll get easier with time." But Cheryl wasn't so sure. She saw something in her husband's eyes, something dark and determined, something that scared her more than her own grief. At the same time, Lucas White sat in his and Mia's apartment, surrounded by scattered belongings and empty bottles. He hadn't left the house since that terrible day at the clinic. He didn't answer his phone or open the door. He turned off his phone and drew the curtains. Grief and guilt tore him apart inside. He remembered how he had persuaded Mia to have the operation, how he had insisted, convinced, manipulated her. At the time, it had seemed like the right thing to do. He wanted her to be more beautiful, more confident. He wanted to be even more proud of her, and now she was gone. And then there was Logan Taylor, Lucas had only met Mia's father a few times, but that was enough to know that he was not someone to be messing with. And now Lucas was sure that Logan would kill him if he found him. He flinched at the loud knock on the door. He froze, holding his breath. The knock repeated, insistent, demanding. "Lucas!" his neighbor's voice. "Lucas, I know you're in there. Open up!" He exhaled with relief and approached the door. "What?" he asked, opening it a couple of inches. His elderly neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, looked at him with undisguised disapproval. "Boy, you're a mess," she said. "I understand you're grieving, but you can't let yourself go like this. And by the way, your apartment is starting to smell." "I'm sorry," Lucas muttered, trying to close the door. "Wait!" Mrs. Johnson held the door open with her hand. "A man was here looking for you. He was tall and serious. He asked which apartment you lived in." Lucas froze. "When?" he asked in a low voice. "This morning. I told him I wasn't sure. He seemed very determined. Is he a relative of your girlfriend?" "Yes," Lucas said, his mind racing. "Thanks for letting me know." He closed the door and leaned against it. Logan Taylor was looking for him. That could only mean one thing. He knew Lucas was responsible for Mia's death and wanted revenge. A week had passed since the funeral, 7 days filled with emptiness and silence in the Taylor home. 7 endless days when every minute stretched into an agonizing eternity. Cheryl went to work, a meaningless presence, automatic movements, an attempt to escape reality into the routine of hospital corridors. Her co-workers looked at her with sympathy, and the patients didn't know what to say. In everyone's eyes, Cheryl saw the question that no one dared to ask out loud. "How are you holding up?" The answer was simple, not at all. Logan took a leave of absence. The head of the transportation company, a grim-faced man with graying hair, silently signed the form, shook Logan's hand, and offered his help. Anything he might need. Logan nodded, thanked him, and left, knowing that no help would help him. He couldn't bring himself to get behind the wheel of a bus, talk to passengers, pretend that life was going on. He couldn't answer questions about his daughter when friendly, regular passengers asked how he was doing. Because for him, life had stopped. On Saturday morning, Cheryl left for her sister's house in New Haven. Her sister insisted that Cheryl needed a change of scenery, at least for a couple of days. "Logan, you should come too," Cheryl said, packing a small bag. "Joanna will be happy to see us both." But Logan shook his head. He couldn't imagine himself sitting in someone else's house, making polite conversation, trying to smile. Not now. After seeing his wife out, Logan was left alone in the house, which suddenly seemed too big, too empty, too quiet. The sound of his own footsteps echoed across the wooden floor. The ticking of the clock on the wall seemed deafening. He sat in the living room, staring at a photo of his daughter on the mantelpiece. Mia was smiling, a summer photo from her high school graduation, a month before she met Lucas. She was wearing a simple blue dress that he and Cheryl had spent all day shopping for, visiting what seemed like every store in Connecticut. Mia's hair was pulled back into an elegant bun, revealing her beautiful neck and delicate shoulders. Happy, beautiful, alive. Perfect, just the way she was. Logan reached for the photo and ran his finger across the glass, over his daughter's smiling face. Why? Was the question he had asked himself hundreds of times that week. Why did she decide to have the surgery? Why didn't she listen to him and Cheryl? Why did she let that guy, Lucas, convince her that she needed a change? Logan spent a sleepless night tossing and turning in a bed that seemed too big without Cheryl. Memories of Mia haunted him, her running toward him after her first day of school, her learning to ride a bike as a teenager and falling, scraping her knees, her standing in this very living room, announcing her decision to have the surgery. Towards morning, when the first rays of sunlight began to filter through the blinds, he was overcome by a strange clarity, a crystal-clear understanding of what he had to do. It wasn't an impulsive decision born of despair. Rather, it was a natural consequence of everything that had happened, the result of thoughts that had been forming in his mind from the moment he learned of his daughter's death. He got out of bed around 6 in the morning. Outside, Connecticut was waking up. He could hear the sound of occasional cars passing by, a dog barking in the distance, and birds beginning to sing in his neighbor's garden. It was a normal Saturday morning for everyone except him. After finishing breakfast, Logan carefully washed the dishes, wiped the table, and put everything in its place. Then he went up to the attic. The stairs creaked under his weight. He and Cheryl had been meaning to fix them for a long time, but kept putting it off. The attic smelled of dust and old things. There were boxes of Mia's childhood toys that they hadn't brought themselves to throw away, old books, seasonal clothing. Logan turned on a dim light and headed for the far corner. There, among the boxes of Christmas decorations and old photo albums, stood a safe. It was small, inconspicuous, and covered with a thin layer of dust. Only he and Cheryl knew about the safe. Logan dialed the combination on the electronic lock, 2005, Mia's birthday, May 20th, and heard a soft click. The metal door opened. Inside were several important documents: birth certificates, marriage certificates, insurance policies. But Logan wasn't interested in those. His hand fumbled for the cold metal at the back of the safe. A Glock 19 pistol, wrapped in oil-soaked cloth. His army past, a reminder of the days when Logan served in the Marine Corps. It seemed like a lifetime ago. He had been allowed to keep his weapon after his discharge, a privilege granted to distinguished servicemen. Logan never thought he would need this gun again. He kept it more as a relic, a symbol of the past, sometimes taking it out to clean it and make sure it was in working order. But now, looking at the matte black metal in his hands, Logan felt a strange sense of calm. It was as if he had found the missing piece of a puzzle, as if everything had fallen into place. He took out the gun, ran his fingers lovingly over the barrel and the handle. He checked the magazine. It was full, as it should be. 16 rounds, more than he needed, much more. Logan carefully wrapped the gun back in the cloth and put it in his jacket pocket. He could feel its weight, both physical and metaphorical. He climbed down from the attic and closed the door behind him. In the hallway, he looked at himself in the mirror. A tall man with military bearing, wearing an ironed shirt and a determined expression. Nothing betrayed his intentions. Nothing indicated that this was a special day. The day when Logan Taylor would cease to be a law-abiding citizen, a bus driver, a family man. He took his car keys from the bowl on the dresser where they always lay. He checked his wallet. There was enough cash if he needed it. He put his phone in his inside pocket. Then he left the house, locking the door carefully behind him. The day promised to be sunny. The bright Connecticut spring sun flooded the streets with warm light. Buds were swelling on the trees, and the first tulips were blooming in the neighbor's garden. How ironic, considering the darkness that filled his soul. Nature continued its cycle, oblivious to human tragedies. Logan got into his old but well-maintained gray Ford. The car started on the first try. As always, he kept it in perfect condition. His father had taught him that, take care of your car, and it will take care of you. Logan pulled out of the driveway and headed down the familiar route to Dr. Nelson's clinic. On the way, he turned on the radio. The local station was broadcasting the weather forecast and news. Warming expected, the governor has announced. As a result of an accident on the highway, fragments of phrases that meant nothing. The world continued to live its normal life, unaware that it had lost one beautiful soul. Dr. Nelson's clinic looked exactly the same as it had on the day Logan identified his daughter's body. A small, neat, 2-story red brick building with a modern sign reading, Dr. Nelson's Aesthetic Surgery and Cosmetology. Logan remembered leaving here a week ago, stunned with grief, barely able to stand. Today he felt collected, focused, determined. He parked right outside the entrance in the visitor parking lot. It was around 9 in the morning on a Saturday, not the busiest time for the clinic. The lights were on in the first-floor windows, and the front door was unlocked. Logan stepped inside, wiping his feet on the doormat in the lobby like a well-mannered guest. The clinic's reception area was decorated in soothing beige and blue tones. Framed certificates and diplomas hung on the walls, along with before and after photos of happy patients. Soft music created an atmosphere of comfort and security. Deception, Logan thought, a facade hiding incompetence and greed. Behind the reception desk sat a young woman with light hair pulled back into a neat ponytail. A professional smile played on her face as she looked up at the visitor. "Good morning. How can I help you?" she asked in a professional, polite tone. "I need to see Dr. Nelson," Logan replied in a calm, even voice. His heart was beating steadily, his breathing deep and measured. Years of military service had taught him to control his body and emotions. "Do you have an appointment?" The girl looked at the computer, ready to check his name on the visitor list. "No, but he knows who I am. Tell him Logan Taylor is here." The woman's expression changed. Her smile became uncertain, and her eyes flashed with recognition. Of course, she must have heard about Mia's case. She might even have been at work that day. "One moment," she frowned, but nodded and picked up the phone, pressing the intercom button. After a brief, muffled conversation that Logan couldn't make out, she looked up. "Dr. Nelson can see you for a few minutes. Please go to office number 3 at the end of the corridor on the right." Logan nodded and headed in the direction she had indicated. The hallway was empty, the office doors closed. Each door had a nameplate with a number and a title. Procedure room, examination room, consulting room. His footsteps echoed hollowly on the pale blue linoleum floor. His hand in his jacket pocket clenched the handle of his gun. The cold metal reminded him of the purpose of his visit and gave him a sense of control over the situation. Dr. Nelson stood at the window of his office, looking out at the street through the half-closed blinds. He was dressed in a white coat over a shirt and tie, a professional look designed to inspire confidence in his patients. He was a tall, fit man of about 38, with closely cropped hair and the professional smile found on the clinic's advertising brochures. Right now, however, he wasn't smiling. He turned when Logan entered, and their eyes met. Logan noticed the dark circles under the surgeon's eyes, his gaunt face. At least Mia's death hadn't left him completely unscathed. That was something. "Mr. Taylor," Nelson said, taking a step forward and extending his hand for a handshake. His voice sounded professionally restrained, mixed with awkwardness. "I understand your grief." Logan ignored the outstretched hand. He couldn't imagine shaking hands with the man who was responsible for his daughter's death, the man whose incompetence and greed had cost Mia her life. "You killed my daughter," he said quietly but clearly, looking Nelson straight in the eye. The surgeon lowered his hand and sighed heavily. He walked around the table and sat down in a chair, gesturing for Logan to take a seat opposite him. Logan remained standing. "Mr. Taylor, I understand your pain and anger," Nelson began in a tone he probably thought was sympathetic. "I offer my deepest condolences, but there are always risks in medicine. We did everything we could to save your daughter. Unfortunately, there were unforeseen complications." "Don't lie." Logan took a step forward, feeling anger rising inside him like a hot wave. "I saw the autopsy report. The police gave me a copy. You damaged an artery during the operation, a basic mistake that even a medical student shouldn't make. And then you couldn't stop the bleeding, and you didn't call for qualified help until it was too late." Nelson turned pale. His hands, resting on the table, trembled slightly. "Yes, a mistake was made," he admitted quietly. "A tragic mistake. I won't deny that I'm responsible for what happened. But I swear, Mr. Taylor, I didn't want your daughter to die. It was an accident. A terrible, tragic accident, but an accident nonetheless." "An accident," Logan repeated, as if tasting the words. He took another step toward the table, towering over the seated surgeon. "Do you know what the police found when they checked your records? 3 complaints from former patients in the last 2 years. 2 near-successful malpractice lawsuits that you settled with money. Probably money from patients as trusting as my daughter. And most interestingly, an interrupted residency in plastic surgery. You didn't even finish your specialization, did you, Dr. Nelson?" The surgeon's face turned ashen. He leaned back in his chair, as if trying to increase the distance between himself and Logan. Logan slowly took the gun out of his pocket. Nelson froze, staring at the weapon with wide eyes. "Mr. Taylor, please, let's talk. I understand you're upset." "Upset?" Logan raised the gun, pointing it at the doctor's chest. "My 19-year-old daughter is dead because of your incompetence, because of your greed, because you performed surgeries you weren't prepared for, at reduced rates, without the necessary qualifications." "I'll call security." Nelson reached for the button on the table. Logan pulled the trigger. The shot rang out deafeningly in the small office. Nelson jerked, a red stain blooming on his white coat. He looked down at his chest in confusion, then up at Logan and slowly sank to the floor. There were screams and noise in the hallway. Logan knew he didn't have much time. He approached the dying doctor and crouched down beside him. "My daughter wanted to live," he said quietly. "She was so young, she had so many plans." Nelson's gaze clouded over. A trickle of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. A few seconds later, his eyes glazed over. Logan stood up and headed for the exit. People were running in the hallway. Someone was shouting to call the police. He walked past them, keeping his gun lowered but visible, enough so that no one would try to stop him. Getting into his car, he took out his phone and dialed the number he had found the day before. It was the address of the apartment where Mia and Lucas had lived, where Lucas now lived alone. There were few cars on the streets. It was a sleepy, quiet Saturday morning. Logan drove slowly, obeying all the rules, not attracting attention. His mind was crystal clear. He knew what he was doing. He knew what would happen next. The house where Lucas lived turned out to be an unremarkable high-rise on the outskirts of town. Logan went up to the third floor and rang the doorbell of apartment number 35. Nothing happened for a long time. Then he heard uncertain footsteps and the door opened slightly. Lucas's haggard face appeared in the crack. His eyes widened in horror when he saw Logan. "Mr. Taylor," Lucas stammered, trying to close the door. Logan pushed the door open forcefully, breaking the chain. Lucas stumbled back, tripping over scattered belongings. The apartment looked like a hurricane had hit it. Empty bottles, dirty clothes, leftover food. "Going somewhere?" Logan asked, noticing a half-packed suitcase in the corner of the room. "Listen." Lucas raised his hands, backing toward the wall. "I know you think it's my fault, but it was her choice. Mia wanted this surgery. After you spent months convincing her she wasn't good enough." Logan closed the door behind him. "After you made her believe her body needed fixing." "I loved her," Lucas shouted. His voice trembled with fear and despair. "I really loved Mia." "No," Logan shook his head. "You loved the idea of her. You wanted her to fit your image of perfection. And for that, you sent her to that butcher's table." Lucas pressed himself against the wall, his eyes darting around the room for an exit. "I didn't want her to die," he whispered. "I never wanted her to be hurt." "But she's dead," Logan said, pulling out his gun. "My girl is dead because you convinced her she needed that operation. You even took out a loan to pay for her death." "Please don't." Lucas slid down the wall, his face contorted with horror. "I'll pay you. I'll do anything, please." Logan looked at his daughter's boyfriend, the young man who was supposed to protect her, care for her, love her for who she was. Instead, he had pushed her into a decision that cost her her life. "I have nothing to lose, Lucas," Logan said calmly. "My daughter is dead. My life is over. But before I go to prison, I want to make sure that everyone responsible for her death gets what they deserve." "It was an accident," Lucas cried. "No one is to blame." "You are to blame." Logan raised the gun. "And you know it." The shot rang out as loudly as the first. Lucas jerked, clutching his chest, and slowly sank to the floor. His eyes remained open, frozen in surprise, almost childlike bewilderment. Logan stood over the body, looking at the young man who had shared his daughter's bed not long ago, who had made plans with her, who had killed her with his love of perfection. He put the gun in his pocket and left the apartment, closing the door carefully behind him. Outside, the sun was still shining, and people went about their business, unaware of the tragedy that had unfolded in an ordinary apartment, in an ordinary building. Logan got into his car and started the engine. He knew he had to go home. He knew Cheryl would be calling, worried about him. He knew the police were already looking for him. There were enough witnesses at the clinic. But before heading home, Logan stopped at the cemetery. He stood by his daughter's fresh grave, staring at the simple stone with her name on it. "I did it, baby," he whispered. "They paid for what they did to you." Logan got into his car and drove home. Familiar streets, familiar turns. A route he had driven thousands of times, coming home from work, picking up Mia from school, taking his family out of town for the weekend. He parked outside his house and just sat there for a while, looking at the building where he had spent most of his life, where he and Cheryl had raised Mia, celebrated birthdays, endured illnesses and arguments, and shared joys. Logan knew the police would be there soon. They might already be there waiting for him. He wasn't going to run or resist. He had already done everything he wanted to do. He took out his phone and dialed his wife's number. "Logan?" Cheryl's voice sounded worried. "Where are you? I've been calling you several times." "I'm home," he replied. "I just wanted to tell you that I love you, Cheryl." "What's wrong?" Her voice sounded alarmed. "You sound strange." "Everything's fine," he smiled, looking at their house. "I just wanted you to know that I did what I had to do, and I don't regret it." "Logan, you're scaring me. What are you talking about?" "You'll find out soon enough," he said. "I'm sorry for what's going to happen. And know that I've always loved you and Mia more than anything in the world." He ended the call without waiting for Cheryl's response. He turned off his phone and placed it on the passenger seat. Now all he could do was wait. Looking at his house through the windshield, Logan Taylor felt a sense of peace for the first time in many days. He had done what he believed was right. He had avenged his daughter. He had punished those responsible for her death. The price was high, the rest of his life in prison, perhaps even the death penalty in their state. But Logan was willing to pay that price, because life without Mia was already worse than any prison.